it's time to build myself a new gravel bike. The 51 Assassin has served me really well, but it's time for something fatter, something racier, and it had to be the 3T Extrema. We went out to the factory recently. Cannot wait to show you that video. It was just blew my mind. Now, I have featured this very briefly on the channel before. I got to test ride it about a year ago and just fell in love with it. And now I've got the opportunity of having my own one. Now, the parts are a whole collection of like recycled bits and pieces. Hopefully I'm going to talk you through it as I go. We stripped down the purple Skylon that you might know from the channel. More on that coming soon. So we've got a whole bunch of SRAM Force components, some new stuff, some old stuff. It's a dead interesting build. There's loads of little twists and turns. But to get started, I know that all of you are asking like, well, how much does it weigh, Paul? Well, 1.6 kilos. Which is about the same weight as a decent hardtail mountain bike, which is pretty much what it is. First job, let's get a seat post in, get it in the work stand. Now, with the build kit of these frames, you actually get a seat post with it. I'm not going to be using it. This is just going to be a donor post. We've actually got an ergon post, which I'm going to show you later on, because you've got to set it up when it's on its wheels, because you've got to get the tilt right as you go. So right now, you don't need to insert this very far or worry about grease, because I'm going to pull that out. And I'm not even going as far as the minimum insertion line. I just want something to clamp with that isn't my nice paintwork. And when you clamp in, get it right down as close to the frame as you can, and we're in. So if you're ever building your own bike, always just have a little moment to pause and think about what I call the order of operations. Loads of people get really, really excited and want to put the bottom bracket in and then realise they've got to take it back out again to run all the brake lines, or they might have put the fork in and forgotten to put some sort of hose damping in there. So what I'm going to do is start with the rear brake, get the hose damping in, but what we've done is I've pulled off the SRAM Force brake calipers from the Skylon, and this frame is quite a bit bigger, so where I've had to cut the ends off isn't going to work. So the front one is probably going to be a little bit short. So what I'm actually going to do, first of all, they need a bit of a service, because just look how filthy they are. So I'm going to show you how I'm going to clean them all off. And we're going to put the rear brake onto the front, and we're going to run a new cable for the rear brake. So first off, let's get these adapters off, because that's all we've got to do is essentially just switch the adapters around. And also, this 3T Extrema doesn't use a normal front brake adapter. It's almost a direct mount directly onto the fork. It's a dead clever system. And I'm going to pull the brake pads out as well. Now, what I'm going to do is make sure I remember which is back and which is front, and then match them with the corresponding rotors that came off the Skylon. So I know that these brake pads are already sort of broken in to that brake pad. So this is the rear brake. I've got over here a disc rotor I've already labelled up as rear as well, but we're going to switch them around. This is going to become the front. These can go in a magnetic parts tray for now. Let's give these a clean. So if you can see just all that brake dust and mess, the best thing to do is just use a Wonder Wipe, because with these you can get right into these little creases. Give it a really good clean. To be honest, it probably doesn't need it, but let's face it, you're building a new bike and you want to make it look as sexy as possible for the first ride, right? And the Wonder Wipe's a great way of just getting in there and getting all that muck off. So this is the rear brake from the Skylon. It's going to go into the front brake of this. And now you can see what I mean by this fork. It doesn't have the two threaded inserts. It's actually got a mount very similar to what you see on the rear of your bike, where you bolt directly onto the fork. Look at that, how much tyre clearance. This actually has 57 millimeters. Tyres I'm going to run are only 55. I've got so much extra space. Super easy, straight through. Just be careful when you're doing this, because you've got a big chunk of metal around here swinging around, and it's so easy for it to hit the fork and then to scratch it. So just, if you're aware of it, you'll be super careful. If you're not and you're just tugging away, it'll bounce around and hit. There you go. And the same rules apply. You need to measure this width here and then get the right bolt length for it. So you're going to need a bolt bigger than that. There we go, that's what we need. Big long bolt like that. And we're going to need to salvage the washer as well. And for the geeks amongst you, this has pre-applied blue thread locker. And of course, when you see that pre-applied blue thread locker, that means you don't have to add any other copper slip or anti-seize. That blue thread locker is there for a reason. You don't want to cover it up with some other thing, so just leave it be. There we go. Now you can see how that looks. Front brake goes directly onto the fork. I think it's becoming more and more popular in gravel now. That should go straight to a 160 rotor. Now what I'm going to do here is just use a bit of electrical tape, because what I don't want is this to knock around and go super tight with your wrap if you're going to do this, like really, really tight. And also you're trying to avoid any creases, because there's going to be another cable in here and you don't want that to rub. Doesn't have to be loads, 2.5 inches is fine, but make sure you don't just pull it, give it a nice clean cut and push down the edges so it's like seamless and smooth. Nice. Now for the back, is going to be the front. That's obviously not going to reach, so I'm going to need to replace the brake cable. Now, do not need that. So we can remove the caliper completely. When you do this, try and keep everything upright, because fluid will leak out of there. So just put that somewhere where it's not going to start leaking. And of course, the other thing to remember, that as you've undone that, you're now going to let air in the system and it'll start dripping out the other side. So just catch hold of the other side and it'll stop you leaking oil all over the floor. Cut off the olive and barb, we are not reusing them. And then just salvage the hydraulic coupling, a little rubber booty, and Mapdec special little mini sort of vibration damping, little, what we call them, pumpkins. But salvage all that, and the rest of that can go in the bin. And then to replace it, because SRAM brake hose is dead expensive and you only buy it in certain lengths, we use this. This is the Jaguar 5mm for dot fluid brake hose. You can buy this off the reel, which means I can measure out exactly what I need. Dead easy, dead convenient. We can just get this job done. So remember, when you're measuring, you need to go, leave yourself enough slack in the down tube. If you pull it really tight, that's when you'll get the rattling. If you've got enough slack that you can push back in, the brake hose will snake through the down tube, and therefore it'll sort of have something to push against. If you pull it guitar string tight, that's when it will vibrate and rattle. So be generous. And also, you always need way more for your handlebars than you think you do. So we're going to come right out to about there, which is about 2 meters, I'd say. So with this frame, while I'm doing this, I'm going to show you some B-roll of the inside of this frame. Now, how these are constructed is dead interesting, and you can sort of see it on the inside and the outside of the frame. So this top tube, head tube and down tube are all filament wound and then constructed into a piece and then laid into the mold all in one piece. These little bits here are woven just like you do in time, and then these bits here are a combination of filament winding and a couple of pre-preg sections just to reinforce it. So you end up with these weird little layers, and you can see where the robot has then gone back in and deburred some of it. This is a crazy robust frame, so there's an awful lot of thickness of carbon here. So if I just hold it with my fingers here, you can feel it's super thick. In fact, the whole bike, there's not a single part of this that feels even remotely flimsy. It feels like, well, a hardtail mountain bike, to be honest, because it's going to need to handle very similar terrain, except without a suspension fork. But down here, I'm going to put a little mini top tube back on. This little thing just stops this hose rattling against that frame. While I remember, I'm going to put this little booty back on as well. It just makes it all look a bit tidier. And also you can see here just how beefed up these rear stays are. A normal brake bolt for like a normal road bike just isn't going to cut it. We're going to have to go longer again. So this is what you need. The 42mm bolts look like that, quite a bit longer. And we're going to need an olive and barb from the olive and barb kit. I need the little SRAM ones, which are red and threaded. Teeny tiny little T8 to make that work. So the trick with these is to thread the red bit onto the silver bit first. And this is a reverse thread, but don't go all the way. Just get it started. Make sure you've got the little coupling, and then you can screw this on, and that is a normal thread. And if you've got a nice clean hose cut, the red section should neatly go over onto the hose. Then to finish up, reverse thread the red section back on. It should look nice and neat like that. Tiniest little bit of dot grease on these parts. 5-sided flare wrench for this. Now what I like to do is get all of this secured out of the way so it's not going to hit any part of my frame, and also all the little kinks are taken out. As you see, it's got like a natural twist. I can take that natural twist out. These are the SRAM bolts that we're using, and before we connect it all up, we're just going to do a depth check to make sure this goes all the way through the frame. It still gives us enough penetration, which is all good. There we go, fun part next, which is getting the headset sorted. It'll zoom out a little bit. And for this, just like to point the frame down ever so slightly. I need to get some insulation in there, because right now you'll be able to hear, I hate that noise. So 3T provide a generous helping. Look at all this frame insulation. I don't know what we're supposed to do with all that. I think one of them is for a dropper post, to be fair. So, and also because we've got frame storage in here, you normally need to glue these up and out of the way. So it's good to have a good thick section that you can glue right into that little crevice and get it out of the way of you just tugging on it. So let's get that in there first of all. Again, I'll show you some shots here of the inside of the frame. You can tell how robust this thing is. And if you're worried about bearing seats and like that, don't worry, we cover that a lot in the factory video, because Luca, the guy that worked on that stand, man, he was passionate. Like, quality control people just at these factories just blow me away. I will say though, without getting too excited, the paint job is nice, don't get me wrong. It's not the finest paint job I have ever seen. It's definitely a thick, robust, like hard wearing paint job. You can tell, but there's probably, I wouldn't say it's rough areas, but the thing is, when you're comparing it to something like a Villia, which has just got the most beautiful and the most perfect paint, it's hard to look at almost any other bike and not see a flaw, to be honest. So here we go, let's get this fed down there. Got frame storage, so we can just remove that. What have you done, Tom? So let's say that this is actually about the right length, because what we want is the hose to be at the bottom of the bottom bracket, not above it. And then we want this to have enough slack that I can pull this out of the way, glue this up out of the way, have it snake around here, and just a little bit of foam just pushing up against the head tube there. So just seeing a little bit there, when I push all that back, is about perfect. So the headsets on these are dead funky, but first of all, let's just get some grease against these surfaces. I've already cut this down to size, so I know that I can just get on and build it. And the way to do this cleanly is grease up the frame and grease up your fork. What you're going to try and do is do it in a process. It means you don't get grease all over your fingers, which then smell all over the bike. So pop that on. So these on the bottom bearing actually use the Dada 52mm bearing, but because this is meant to be an aero racy bike, I try and slim down the head tube. Now we are going for the British brakes, which means that I want my front brake on the right hand side. All of that out of the way. My rear brake on the left. It's going to look like that. And here what I'm doing is I'm like pulling on the cables. That's going to keep the fork from falling out, so don't let go of those cables. Thread on our top bearing. Add a little bit of a grease, trying to get onto that inner surface. And this is where you can be fairly liberal, because this is where sweat and stuff's going to run. In fact, I've got to be careful when I say liberal to you guys, because when I say liberal, I mean some people get really, really liberal with their grease. It goes absolutely everywhere. Okay, and that is our little compression ring. Posh all that down. The top cap, just trying to keep all of this as neat as possible. And now I think we can probably just let that go. There's enough friction there to hold it all in place. So I'm going for 2 spacers on this, so they can just clip round. I mean, the quality of these fixings is beautiful. There's no flash lines on there or anything. Really nice, actually. And then this is the really critical bit. This is the top part before you hit the stem, and this is a properly dense, thick piece of plastic. And that's kind of important that all of this is good quality, thick, dense plastic, because you're going to compress it. And if it's that really squishy or 3D printed stuff, sometimes it just compresses and his head starts coming loose. So I love it when you see just really good quality plastics being here. They might look heavy, they might be heavy, but like you just need these parts to be solid, robust, and to avoid being compressed. Give all this a bit of a tidy up. Now 3T ask for carbon construction paste on this, so let's give this a clean off. And they're quite specific about using their own carbon construction paste, which is a beautiful shade of pink. And the reason for that is they use this like cast aluminium wedge, and that sits just there. And then we have this other section with 2 bolts into it, that sits there. And then our stem, look at this masterpiece. This is actually a carbon stem, and if you guys can see, it's not aluminium, that has got carbon pre-preg that's then been painted. It's properly solid. That is going to sit like that. And there's a little hole just here. And the reason we want that hole, get the right pick, is we should be able to put that through and hit the steerer. If that pick goes through, it means it's too high and we're not clamping the right place. So we should be able to put that through and then feel the steerer through that hole. Let us know we've got, you know, the right depth. You preload the bolt here, make sure that you've still got free rotation but no play, and then you just do these 2 bolts up, and they actually provide you this cool little tool, which is just the right size to get in there. And we just want 5 Newton meters, and we don't have to worry about aligning because that's all taken care of by sort of the D-shaped steerer. So see if I can show you this a bit better. But we now have this little gap here, so it is internal, but you just do this, you have to route it inside the stem. Now I'm going to be using 3T's handlebar. This is 40 centimeters center to center with an awesome flare on it as well. I did consider using the zip one, but I think I'm going to quite enjoy that, to be fair, so I'm going to give this a go. Now weirdly, they have put these completely pointless cable guides because we need to go through that hole and out there, so this is useless. And a little bit of a sanity check, so a front brake is the one using the SRAM cable from before, remember, and that is going to my right hand one. And few day fresh t-shirt, stopped here last night, just needed to have a little tinker with this. I needed to remove a little bit of the internal sort of the tube and insulation, so I want to make sure that I get really free rotation here, so nothing should be sticking before I start putting these through. And I want to make sure that I leave all this slack down here. It's so tempting to pull this tight, so you've got to keep enough slack in here but then feed all this back through. So a couple of little minor adjustments. You know, I was watching the Cade Media channel, and there was Nick on there complaining about cable routing and how he doesn't service bikes anymore and just looks after his custom builds customers. And to me, really, like being a professional bike mechanic, you've got to work quickly, you've got to work efficiently, and you've got to charge properly for your time. And so many bike mechanics see it as a bit of a lifestyle job, a bit of a DOS, and that's not the case at all. You can earn really well as a bike mechanic, but you've got to be professional and you've got to be prepared to stand up in front of your customer and charge for your time. Right, so with these 3Ts, we have a little cap just here, but we're going to take that off and replace it with the little Garmin mount, which actually comes with the whole bike frame. When you buy a frame kit, you mean you get everything. You know, you get the stem, the handlebars, the seat post, and a Garmin mount. I mean, normally that's a 70 quid option. Not only that, but it's actually a decent K-edge one as well. Oh my God. This is all pre-thread locked. Don't need to add anything more to this. Happy days. So that is what that looks like. I think that very smart, very clean. You can probably adjust the angle if you want to here. This part here is going to clip onto the stem. There we go. So we don't want to do this up tight just yet because I want to get the levers on and roughly position, then get it onto its wheel, so I know exactly where that's going to sit in relation to the ground. So this can all stay relatively loose. There's no point bringing any of that up torque just yet. So the levers, we are going for SRAM Force. I do think these are probably the best gravel levers on the market. One, you get loads of hand space, but also with the force level, you get that little extra button just there. And I think for gravel, it's dead nice to be able to just flip through the pages of your Garmin and still keep a really, really good grip on the bars. Now the rival spec ones, the only thing you really lose is that button. And when you go to red, the only thing you really gain is an extra brake adjust, which I don't think is that important at all, but especially on gravel. Maybe on road, it gives you a little bit more feel, but it's, I mean, as always, when you get to the top end group sets, you know, the marginal gain gets smaller and smaller. So these are the levers that came off of the Skylon, and I like to use a really long 5mm bit for this because you've got to get past all the rubber, and a fairly robust one because this this bolt is notorious for getting stripped, and it's because you're trying to get an Allen key around a really awkward angle with all this rubber. If you have something solid like that, you can keep the tool well and truly engaged the whole time. Now again, we are not going for lots of torque here just to keep it in position because we still need to move this while we get these all connected up and bleed the brakes, get them in position, so just loose assembly. And the important thing is, while you're doing all this, always make sure that you've got free rotation of the handlebars. It's so easy while you're doing all this is to pull the cables tight, and the next thing you know, you've locked everything up. So just keep checking everything's nice and free, and then we can try and stuff as much of this back into the handlebar as possible and think about connecting our brakes up. All love your tools. So these are the Nipex hose cutters. In all honesty, they're okay, but mostly because the blades are fairly robust. And if you're using them a lot in the workshop, remember, safety squint. Should be relatively empty, but just to be sure, keep your eyes well away. Little coupling, same as before, reverse thread, little T8 bit from Park Tool. This is quite handy. You can screw that in. A little bit of dot grease, don't need to go mad. And then loads of you ask like how I do torque settings on this. So this is an open-ended wrench for this. This goes over the top here. So this needs 8 Newton meters, and it's slightly faffy, but I still think it's easier than trying to get a crow's foot lined up. Sort of take it off and move it around, but you're trying to get a crow's foot, which you have to have at a 90-degree angle, is in my opinion just even more faffy than trying to get one of these lined up. There we go, that's our 8. Move that into position, put your hoods back. Cool, looking good. At this point here, I made a right load of mess. I'm gonna quick tidy up all the stuff that I don't need, keep my workbench clear. What I want to do at this point is just to get this glued inside here. So I'm going to glue it right up against this side, and we're just going to use this. So I'm going to give that a bit of a clean with IPA stuff. And then you need to use a high viscosity, so Sudal, for those of you who watch the road bike racing, Lotto Sudal, that's Sudal, make super glue. And we are just going to add a few drops. You can see I've got my gloves on for this. We're going to glue that right up there. What is it with super glue? That no matter how viscosity it is, it always goes absolutely everywhere. I've got a bit down there that I think I just want to glue up a little bit better. Personally, I love to get the brakes bled at this stage if I can. Most of the time when we're fitting for customers down here, we won't be able to do that. We need to make sure that you've come here, sat on your bike, get your final fit and adjustments made. So if you ever come for a bike fitting with us, that'll be done without any of the brake hoses fitted. We will make sure the stem is exactly the right height, length, etc. And only then will we then route the cables through, cut them and chop them, because as you see, we want these to be the precise length to make sure they're not going to rattle. Something that I think you can only really do if you know your exact stack height to start with, or you come and get fitted and confirm it, because nobody likes to see a big chimney and cables that are too short and restrict your handlebars. So I'm a perfectionist, I like to get it right on day one. So to do this, we just bring this down ever so slightly. You can still see me. Let's go up a little bit so you can see me. We're going to twizzle the frame really so that our lever is going to be higher than our caliper, and I'm just going to use one of these because I can. I've got one, but you just need a bleed block in there or some description. Using a big chunk of metal, fully leveraged, gets you a really, really nice bleed. Loads of mechanics whinge about bleeding SRAM brakes, but I don't see why. It's probably because they're trying to do it with a really poor quality bleed kit. And to be fair, there are dozens and dozens out there of really cheap stuff, but you need something quite rigid and with really good fixings to get a really good bleed off SRAM. So I've tried them all, to be fair, and as much as I hate it, I just come back to the SRAM Pro bleed kit because solid syringes, really good fixings, and I haven't come across anything that is better because you do need a little bit of pressure behind it to get all of those bubbles out, and you've got to like pull back on the syringe. So let me show you. The SRAM Pro bleed kit, solid syringes, solid metal fittings, and that is the bleeding edge tool just there. And you can buy all of the seals as well, so you have to keep buying the whole kit. If you're a professional bike shop, you can just buy the replacement seals, and like when the winter sometime, you just go through and replace all your seals one slow winter's day. The important thing with SRAM is getting your syringes set up. I think this is where everybody rushes. So all I'm going to do is pull down, let everything drain, push up, get rid of all the air bubbles. See, I've just got a cloth over the end here, and then lock it off. And then you've got to start that process of just creating a little vacuum. Don't need to go mad with this. You don't want to pull air back past the seals. And there's a little bit of skill and technique to knowing how hard to pull, because it's easy to pull too far and you wonder where all the air's coming from, and you're just pulling air back through all of those. A little shake, let all the bubbles rise to the surface. Cool. Plug that in there, and if you can, just try and get it to rest up high. Like, I've seen loads of people like 3D print bits and pieces for this. Personally, I've never really felt the need, but you can if you want. Now the lever end doesn't actually need that much oil in because you're going to be pushing oil back from this end. It just needs something there. So we're going for the rear brake. Here we go. So we're just pushing from this side, and you see all those bubbles come up. Loads and loads. Just keep an eye, never let your syringes run empty. Close off at the lever, and then some very lightly pull back on the syringe at the caliper end. Couple of little bubbles come out there. Don't need to go mad with this. You don't need to pull too far because you will pull air through the seals. Push back through, and you can lock off the caliper. At that point, you should have a bite point already, but it's a little bit spongy still. And this is where we can just improve the bite point here. And you can be pretty gentle with this, and we have to be very gentle with it. You're just manipulating it ever so slightly. If you're pulling back really hard, you'll just be sucking oil out. You don't want to be doing that. You're just trying to create a very small vacuum just to tease those bubbles out. Quite a sort of aggressive flick of the lever. We want some enough to any little bubbles that are sort of stuck to the outside of this to be shaken free. So you can give the whole bike a little bit of a shake and just trying to get those bubbles, anything that might be stuck, just to work their way up towards the lever and back out through the syringe. Cool. And sometimes here I just like to move the bike up a little bit. There we go. You can just see a couple more bubbles just working their way out. And then with SRAM, the last thing you want to do is keep pulling the lever back and then apply a little bit of pressure on the syringe here and just let that lever come forwards and then stop and then undo everything and replace your bleed nipples. So you don't want to lock this syringe off, because if you do, it will be pressurized and it will go everywhere. Just going to hold this cloth in place. Just let that cloth absorb that fluid. And again, just because we're going to fill that volume, put your cloth in place, and this is just finger tight. Okay, and check your bite point. That is about perfect. You just got a small amount of movement. That's what they call the free play. Bite point is there, and then that is your modulation. Cool. Right, that was pretty boring. Let me crack on with the front brake. I'll see you back here when we get to the fun stuff. Time for some bottom bracket action. We're going for the Bocconi standard steel bearings, 75 quid, really well weather sealed, cannot go wrong. And we're just going to be using the XHP 222 as a lubricant and as a corrosion resistance, because this is all well and truly in tolerance. Happy with that. The guys at 3T have done a great job With Bocconi, you need to lubricate this little bit here as well, because this is just an O-ring for weather sealing, so you get a nice watertight seal. Just going to manipulate that hose out of the way, find that a place to settle. Just make sure that hose isn't going to get trapped. There we go. And the pro thing to do here is to make sure your logos are facing up. Right, but what about cranksets? Now, this is what came off the Skylon. This is the SRAM Force in 170mm. I think we're going to reuse this. This has got a 2x on at the moment, but it's just a standard 8-bolt fix-in, so we can change that. Now, I've got a couple of options. This is a 42 tooth, the SRAM official one, and I've also got this from Ratio Components, who are just up the road from us. Looks really cool. This is a 40 tooth. This is what I was using on the Assassin, and it actually worked really well because when we go gravel riding, some days it can just be a quick blast out, up a steep hill. Everywhere we go around here is steep. But also if you're going to be doing some bike packing, you're going to have a backpack on, loads of frame bags, or you're going to do some monster miles. My God, is that 40 tooth very, very welcome. But it's filthy, and I just can't bring myself to put this on a brand new bike, so I'm going to give it a clean. So if you haven't seen our parts washer before, this is made by Rozone. It's like a bio-remediation, which means that oil goes in and enzymes eat all the stuff. Anyway, you fill it up with a whole load of fluid. There's a big sort of filter mat here that has all those enzymes in, and it just cleans stuff. And there's no need for throwing away loads of dirty stuff. We service it about once a year, clear out all the gunk that accumulates under the filter, and it's really, really effective. This massive one is a huge help because you can get sometimes really filthy bikes that have got loads of tires, and you get the whole bike in there and just give it all a good scrub. Not the sort of thing you'd do to your pristine Colnago or something, but when you have like a commuter bike which has just had loads of road grime, just get it in here, clean it up, job done. Now we do have a sonic cleaner as well, but in all honesty, the sonic cleaner gets a little bit dangerous, especially when you're putting in like highly anodized parts. It can sometimes just ruin that anodizing. This is super safe. I've never had any problems with it, but you do need to make sure you rinse it off. So we just have a sink here. And again, all eco enzymes, remember, this is definitely not going to hurt any sort of wildlife. The important thing to remember is once you've done that with steel components, or give it a blast with some air, because you don't want it to go rusty, just sat on the sink. Rubber glove, here we go. So you might ask, if it's so safe, why am I wearing rubber gloves? Well, it is actually a degreaser, so it just takes all the oils out of your fingers and just makes them really, really dry. You can use it without, but to be honest, you just got to use loads of moisturiser. So we just have a pair of rubber gloves each sat on the side there, dead easy. Right, the thing with these little bolts, you need a tiny little Torx key, T20, and you want to make sure that the bolt stays engaged. They're dead easy to strip, so use a decent ratchet. If you're trying to do this with an Allen key, taking the tool in and out, it will just come out and destroy the bolt. So get a good quality one that you can keep engaged in the tool. Go around, crack the torque on all of those, and then you can wind them all out. And you'll see the ratchet just means that the tool stays engaged. You don't destroy the heads of the bolts. Give that a little wipe. And what we need to do here is just check the integrity of the blue Loctite. That is probably okay. If anything less than that, replace that blue Loctite. You don't need grease. Just need the Loctite that's on there, and that is okay. If these have been on and off a couple of times, that's missing, just replace it with like Loctite 248. Or if you're really fussy, get a new bolt pack, put new bolts in. Important thing here is just bring it to the point where it's touching, but do it on opposite sides, so you can do like a star formation like this, just so it's touching. Not ready to use the torque wrench yet, because if you don't do this, you've got the risk of warping the chainring. If you warp the chainring, you'll never get like a nice smooth chain. So just to the point where it's making contact, and now we can get a torque wrench on. And then just like before, let the ratchet do the work, and don't just keep taking your tool out. Leave the tool engaged and go around in that star formation until we're up to torque. Scrub that, fresh idea. You see, initially I was going to fit a normal SRAM Explorer rear mech, but just remembered, got one of these, which is the T-type. It actually says extra stock. This was on eBay. I've just cancelled the listing, and we have a T-type rear mech, so I'm going to use that, which means that I can't use this crankset anymore. So if you don't know, SRAM do two different axle types. The standard one for 2x setups and normal, and then they do a special wide version as well. And you'll know because quite helpfully says SRAM dub wide on there. You also normally get little booties on the end as well, which is dead helpful. So we're going to use that. Generally speaking, the rule is if you're using a T-type, you definitely want a wide crankset. And if you're using a 2x system with the very small chain rings and very wide tyres, then this gives you the ability to run a 2x system with very wide tyres and allow your front mech to actually shift over like you want. So let's go back to where we were. Let's remove all this, switch it all around again, and back to square one with a better plan. Interestingly, the second time these have come off, and hopefully you guys can see there, most of that blue Loctite has come off. So before I put them back on, I'm going to replace that. And the easiest way is a bit of Loctite 248. I'm just going to put this 2x back on here and put that back on the shelf for another project. Okay, so new cranks come with new bolts, which is always handy. Nice one, SRAM. Now, I do think these SRAM Force cranksets are actually remarkably good value. I mean, they're always on sale for about £120 for a set of carbon cranks. And they seem, let me know in the comments, but they seem to be extremely durable. I don't know about you, but the ones that we've had fitted to gravel bikes have taken an absolute hammering, and they still clean up pretty well. While I'm doing this, if anyone's wondering about all the various chainring offsets, etc., that you get for SRAM stuff, so the SRAM Explore that goes with their 1x system, these have got a 6.5mm offset for a 47.5mm chain line. If you go to their mountain bike range, you'll see two offsets. They've got a 3mm offset and a 0 offset as well. But the thing is, you can't put the mountain bike chain rings onto a road crankset really and then compensate for spacers. It doesn't kind of work like that. These mechs, which are now 13 speed, need to be extremely accurate, and I found that even just being a millimetre out is enough to really not completely ruin your shifting, but you definitely don't get the crisp, clean shifting that SRAM intended. So now the other thing we're going to need is spacers, because now this axle is wider, but the bottom bracket isn't. You can either go to the SRAM documentation for that or the Bocconi. In this case, we're going to go to the Bocconi because the bottom bracket doesn't have any of those little grooves in it. And the Bocconi one says that I need a 5mm spacer, which comes in their space pack. Bottom bracket has got the double seals. So behind here, we've got another set of seals, and then the bearings have 2 seals on as well. So incredible amount of waterproofing. Very nice. And then we want 5mm of spacers on the drive side. Top tip here, when you're doing these up, keep it moving, because if the bearings are going to bind because you've got the spacer configuration wrong, you'll know really quickly. If you just leave it like this and just crank on 50 Newton meters without checking, and you've got the spacers wrong, you're probably going to ruin those bearings. So just keep things moving, make sure everything's still nice and free flowing whilst you bring this up to torque. See, this is still moving nicely, and now I feel confident I can just do the final 50 newtons. These things don't stay on unless you put the pedals on, so I'm just going to get the pedals on now to stop them falling on the floor. Purple time pedals, of course. Oh, already got a pedal washer on that one. Before you all get excited by the spin test, let's make sure we set the preload. Just dial on the preload until we get no movement anywhere. So let's put that through. Everything's touching. Back it off ever so slowly. And you shouldn't have any movement in that. At the same time, should spin nice. Wicked. Fun bits. T-type rear mechs. So first off, no grease on the bushings. Slot that into there. And you've got a little nil section in here. I don't know if you can just see that moving. There we go. See if we can get that into focus for you. There we go. And that needs to go into that direction. So if you put it in front of you and then turn it clockwise, it will sit so it's all nice and flush. Now the other thing is that on these you've got a little button here, and at the moment it's in its like operation for normal riding, but if you open it up you'll see a little cog and then you'll see a little lock. So The little lock is when you're trying to remove the rear wheel. We need it in the setup mode for now. So we're going to in the second position. So that slots on. But this bolt, the one that actually holds it into your frame, this does need greasing. And this needs greasing both on the threads and weirdly just on this little edge here. So just go back and remove some of the grease from that surface. Cool. So if you've got this mounted correctly, the little plate should stay in place and it will just swing on its clamp here. So let me show you. So you might be able to see these two little lines here, and as I move this, this stays clamped and this rotates. What we're after. So from there we open this cage up into its fully open position, and then we can get the back wheel in, set it all up. Check out my wheels. You might remember these from a previous build. These are the light carbon bicycle rims laced to a set of DT Swiss 240s. They used to have like a slick tyre on, but now I fitted them up with my favourite mountain bike tyre. This is the Vittoria Mezcal. This comes from all my days racing, like Trail Quest, mountain bike orienteering, that sort of thing. And they're a great tyre for when you've got no idea what the terrain might be, or it's just going to be really varied. So it could be on paved road, could be on gravel, could be on wet grassy slopes or wet rock. These will normally get you through a day without thinking that was a terrible choice. They also wear really well, so if you are riding it a lot on asphalt, etc., dead chuff with them. And the punch resistance has been pretty good as well. So they stopped doing it in the gravel and went to their Tirano sizes. So dead chuff that I can now get them in a 55mm width. So first job, there's like a little anti-slip shim, which I am definitely going to use. And you're going to line that up with where it's going to clamp on your frame. You see there's a little anti-slip shim in there, and then we're going to tighten this bolt down here to lock it in place. And this is a little bit fiddly, but it's only a job that you do once. After that, be really liberal with the carbon construction paste. Slide it back in. So once you've got all that set, then you can come back, and the last thing you do is do these bolts up here, and that just literally locks everything in position. And the idea is that this provides a fair bit of flex and therefore comfort. I'll let you know how that goes. Here it is, new bike. Well done for making it through this far in the video. 45 minutes long so far, so I'll be quick and finish this off. So, big thing you want to know, tyre width. These are actually a 52/622 in the ETRTO size, but seagulls. Width as measured is giving me 56 point something, so I've really maxed out the tyre clearance there, and that's because these rims are super wide. They're like a 29mm, maybe even 30 internal. I'll look it up, put it in the description for you. The whole bike, as you see it right here, with my pedals, with my Wahoo computer, is 9.2 kilograms. I'm really happy with that. I could make it a bit lighter, but I just don't feel I need to. My Wahoo fits perfectly with the included Garmin mount, etc. That was really handy. And there we go. Loving the frame storage, so many little details. If you want to see the actual ride review I did with this, I'll post that in the description below. I'm pretty sure this will ride just as well as the one that I rode a little while ago. Right, I can't wait. Big adventures await. Let's go. Talking about progressive designs, there are 4 bikes in the range that are made here in Italy. They do have some designs that are made out in Asia still at a lower price point, but we are really focused on this made in Italy. There are 3 gravel bikes and 1 road bike, and we've got this opportunity here of seeing them all sort of laid out in front of us because the range is fairly interesting. Now, it all kind of started with RaceMax, and they still say this is their real race-inspired gravel bikes. 50mm tyre clearance, the question that everybody asks before they think about anything else. 50mm I still think is enough for most gravel racing, unless you're on that real American like loose gravel and you want those really wide tyres. For nearly everything European, I think this is absolutely spot on. We've reviewed this on the channel before. It rides really beautifully and it's super light, aerodynamic inspired, all that sort of good stuff. Now from that, following all of the trends, we've got the Extrema and we've got the new Ultra. I'll come back to this in a second. But this is what it's all about right now. We've just seen this being built. This is the one where the bottom bracket and the head tube come pre-made, and then all the filament winding is on the main tube section, and the rear triangle is made how you've just seen. Now, this is fairly interesting because it's a bike that, yes, you can use it for racing. It's got a 57mm tyre clearance, but more importantly, they've made it a little bit more comfortable, raised the stack a little bit, and made it ready for a suspension fork as well. So this has got DT Swiss one on there. There's others from Cane Creek. There's quite a few brands now coming out with suspension fork designs. What I love about this is that they've also brought in some like usability features as well. So they've actually gone to a 52mm token bearing, which means you get loads more versatility in that whole cockpit design as well. And of course, it's almost £2,000 cheaper. But if you're a bit undecided, I can't decide which one to go for, the Extrema, which I have to say is still like my favourite. I reviewed this and I absolutely loved it because it just suits what I do as a gravel rider here in the Lake District, over there in the Lake District, miles away. And this is 57mm tyre clearance, but it's nice and light and agile like you'd expect a race bike to be. And it's got a little bit of load carrying capacity. So for me, if I was going to have one bike, this would probably be the one that I would choose because of the variety of stuff that I do. Now, over here, they've actually got a good example of something that might tempt me away, and this is the Ultra. Remember the slightly cheaper one with the pre-made sections, but with the rigid fork and a more aero-inspired cockpit as well. So remember, because you've got that 52mm top cap, you can fit whatever handlebar you want on there. This one is just getting prepared, ready to go out to Unbound for one of their ambassador riders. But the cockpit they've got on here is pretty new. We can't show you all of it just yet. But yeah, you can just put on whatever cockpit. And there are some really good one-piece cockpits out there right now. Now, that's their gravel range. That's what 3T are probably best known for right now, and their most desirable bikes. But we can't really not talk about the Strada. I mean, that's just their road bike. And this is the one that we've seen raced. Now, the design aesthetics are definitely divide opinion, you know, the big head tube, etc. But we have seen lots of the design elements from this bike make it onto other more mainstream designs that are out there right now. It rides really, really well, and I think if they ever got the aesthetics of this right, it would be such a popular bike. Now, I've already reviewed the RaceMax and the Strada on our channel before, a few years ago. We've got an Ultra on the way. If you want to know what I think about this Ultra design, which I'm really keen to ride, get down in the comment section, and of course subscribe to the channel because the review of this is going to be coming up in the next few weeks or so. I can't wait. The only question is, do I get it with suspension forks or do I go rapid and rigid?